when you like gather a bunch of things for donation, but then it's like, how do I take the leap from having these clothes to getting rid of them?
I had to move apartments, and then I was like, okay, now I can take them to...
It's awful. I'm like, I would do anything but go drop clothes off for donation. That's like the worst task I can imagine. Except for reading Chapter 2 of Adam's Story by Jack Whalen, the sequel to Charlie and Sam, written in 2004.
Wow, a year normally off topic to me. I choose to ignore that decade of content creation.
Mm-hmm. Not a great one. Oh god, the chapters are so long!
Jack remember, he has sold a hit Mormon film, and now he's just reveling in his glory. He's like, I am the renowned author, Jack fucking Whalen.
20 fucking pages of Jack fucking Whalen.
He's like, I'm gonna give them what they want. Jack attack.
Get whatever you need to survive this. What happened in chapter 1? They met Adam's grandparents. They're obviously joining Mormonism for some reason. They're just lapping it up.
Yeah.
Eager little beavers for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And there's a woman missionary who is, kind of being a bitch.
Oh, yeah, and is sort of seeming like a setup to a potential romantic interest.
Uh-huh.
Is this going to be a struggle?
Adam described her as vaguely Native American looking, which, as we know from reading 2 Jack Whalen books now, Jack has an erotic connection to Native American people in his mind.
He does.
And it is always coming up, just when you think there's no other reason it would come up. It's a new character.
What's so fun is, like, projection when people will say stuff and you're like, oh, I can tell what's on your mind.
Yep.
Like, and you're not clocking it.
No.
That's the whole of Jack Whalen's approach to fiction.
That's why we keep doing this week after week.
Uh-huh.
We took 2 weeks off because I was sick, by the way. After Zone Conference ended, President McNamara told us he had a few more interviews before he could meet with us. Within minutes, the meeting house halls were deserted except for Dono and her companion, Sister Bagley, a dewy-eyed, soft-spoken new missionary who was both shy and yet strangely intense in her religious fervour. And Norton and me, cocky on the outside but very much worried about tangling with Brianna Dono. Does he know her first name?
Did Jack mean, like, doe-eyed, or did he mean, like,
Dewy.
genuinely, like, she's dripping from
crying.
the eyeballs?
One of the best qualities in a missionary. Easily tearful. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have known a sister missionary's first name, but throughout the mission, she was called Brianna Be Brief by the... what a roast.
Okay, wait, they're all calling each other by their first names on the mission?
No, they're saying ordinarily he wouldn't, but she was being bullied on the mission for being too long-winded. I don't know. She was... Throughout the mission, she was called Brianna Be Brief by the elders unfortunate enough to have ever served in the same district with her. He has never described one single... I think we've had at least 3 sister missionaries throughout Jack Whalen fiction. There has never been one written about in a positive way.
No, and
she's always ball-busting. She's always, like...
But he likes the tough.
But then he also likes it. He married one.
Uh-huh.
Ambivalence is a big part of eroticism.
Ambivalence?
Yeah, like... feeling like you kind of can't stand someone, that actually there's kind of can be an erotic... It's actually one of the big 5, like, elements of eroticism is ambivalence. This, like, sometimes you like them, sometimes you don't. It's kind of just like...
The dance.
Polarity.
You said that he has never said a positive thing about a sister missionary. I think that can be expanded to say he's never said a positive thing about a woman.
Yeah, because even when it is positive, it's, like, positive in a really sexist way.
Yeah, it's either, like... She's very ugly and didn't keep up with herself because she's just worthless.
But something
or she
about
cares
her was
too much
really
about
banging.
her looks.
Yeah, I know. Very hard to strike the right balance. He seems to always write the main characters like, like you don't know you're beautiful. Like the doesn't know that she's hot, but is like just an absolute 10. She had the nickname because once she had her mind set on something, she'd press her arguments until she wore everybody down. While Dono sat and studied the notes she'd prepared for our meeting with the president, I paced the floor. This is taking too long. Norton and I have work to do. Banksy.
Does he feel locked out?
No, he knows how to get through a door.
He can open a simple latch lever. He's a smart cat.
I've actually had to replace 2 of the doors in my apartment, the bedroom door being one of them, because the normal levers that you pull like this, Banksy knows how to open those. So now I have like the the circle, you have to twisty ones. But actually, I think he got out of there the other day too. Like, he's very good at opening doors.
That type of intelligence is very interesting for your two cats because Banksy is so clearly intelligent in that way. And Bernie is like, this is a magic portal. I rediscover it every time. I have no idea.
Family system dynamics. Blah, 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 blah. Dunno looked up. Let me see if I understand. What you and Elder Norton have to do is very important, but what Sister Bagley and I have planned for tonight is of no value. Is that how you see it, Elder? Our companions were staring at us. I so much wanted to say something mean, but for Sister Bagley's sake, I held back. Not at all, sister. We're all in this work together. She smiled politely. I suspected she might have wanted to unleash some law school rhetoric on me, but to her credit, she didn't do it. Maybe for the same reason I hadn't said anything. I appreciate that, Elder. I sat down
Only
next to her.
because Jack couldn't actually bring the law school rhetoric.
I
He's
love...
like, this can't play out.
I know. He's like, I can't write this.
I was going to hit her with some very intelligent discourse and then decided not to.
Oh my god, you're so right. You're so right. Because you know that if he had it, he would have written it. Because he would want to flex. He loves showing how good he is at, like, roasting people.
And commenting on the weather.
Wait, what was I going to say? Oh, I just love how every book explores, like, Jack's feelings about women. Because, next thing. I'm curious about something. Since you already have a law degree, why did you even come on a mission? Like, you can tell that it's a point of, like, thought in Jack's mind. Like, you know, a woman having a law degree going, you know, just, it's all just like the Matrix with all the numbers. You just like, can't, something's not adding up.
Jack is the one.
You could be making a pile of money right now. I wanted my life to count for something. Oh, sure, and also because you weren't married, right? I meant it as a harmless joke, so I wasn't prepared for how she took it. For some reason, I'd hit a nerve. Sorry, I was just joking around, I said. Okay, so he tells us that she's had a really intense reaction, but doesn't give any details of what that reaction was.
Show, not tell.
She recovered quickly enough to come back to me. Lazy, Jack, lazy. Is that your opinion of all sister missionaries, Elder Roberts? Oh, no, not really. I was just me then, right? Look, I don't need to justify to you or to anyone else why I came on a mission. And another thing, I don't see that my personal life is any of your concern. Sorry, I was just trying to start a conversation, but I can see you'd rather be left alone. I stood up and walked away.
Isn't that just exactly like the modern male thing? Is like, I'm just going to walk up and say the most, like, unintendedly destructive, critical shit, like, most offensive thing, and then be like, whoa, if you're going to take that this mean, then I guess I was just trying to be nice.
For the next few minutes, I pretended to ignore her, but I kept stealing glances at her. I felt sorry for her. Nobody in the mission liked her. At least none of the elders in any area she'd ever been in. She's so in your face about everything, I thought. Everyone just puts up with her. I bet that's the way it's always been. Although she
is unchanging. She is a static being existing in angst and... and I'm too high.
Yeah, but you gotta say such as anything.
Salinity.
There you go. Although she irked me, I felt guilty for what I'd said. He didn't say anything, he just thought it in his head. She probably came on a mission for the same reason most people came. Oh, sorry, I think the tone was softer. The same reason I came. I'd grown up with my mum encouraging me to be nice. I knew she would not approve of the way I'd treated Sister Dunno, so after a few minutes I walked over to her again. You know what? I need to apologise for what I said. At first she gave me an icy stare, but then, as she decided my apology was sincere, her expression softened. Thank you for saying that. We made eye contact. She had an ivory complexion. Game over. That's the fucking main love interest of the book, obviously.
Uh-huh.
An ivory complexion.
There's only one thing Jack loves. Actually, no. First pick is the ivory blondes. We know this.
Someone who can have an ivory complexion and somehow look Native American is Jack's dream woman.
Oh, that is the dream, yeah.
He wants the best of both worlds.
A Lamanite turned righteous.
And an interesting combination of dark brown hair and blue eyes. In high school, I'd once told a friend I wanted to find a girl with brown hair and blue eyes. And now standing in front of her, I was surprised there was anything to like about her. I kept staring at her.
Oh my god, there's just only one thing Jack wants to write about, and it's being a man horny for marriage, and that's why he couldn't write any more about Sam. He's like, move on, let's fast forward 20 years, next Sam.
Yeah, you're right, huh?
Next little Jack.
Skip 20 years, yeah.
I must needs birth another avatar of myself.
And then after a few seconds, we both panicked. I turned away and she escaped down the hall. I felt like an idiot. I worried she'd think I liked her for saying sorry for being a dick. She's going to think I'm flirting. I thought of going after her and telling her I didn't, but somehow that didn't seem like the polite thing to do, so I let it go. A few minutes later, President McNamara opened the door and 2 elders left. He called out to me, "Elder Roberts, what time did you say your appointment is?" He motioned the 4 of us to come into the stake president's office he was using for interviews. 6:30, I said as we sat down and he closed the door. He looked at his watch. "Maybe we should reschedule then." "This shouldn't take long, President McNamara," Dono said briskly. "If it meets with your approval, I would like to read a prepared statement and then we can proceed." "Yes, by all means, Sister Dono," I said. "I'm sure we're all waiting for your prepared statement, which you so carefully crafted during President McNamara's inspiring closing message to us." This chapter is sizzling with
passive
tension.
aggression.
Dono continued to glance over her notes, but then, realizing everyone was waiting for her to respond, she looked over at me and asked, "I'm sorry, Elder, did you say something?" I gave her a fake smile. "Nothing important, Sister Dono." President McNamara, who had already put in a long day, sighed at having yet one more mountain to climb. "We'd better pray before we start. Elder Roberts, will you offer the prayer?" In the prayer, I said, "Please help us resolve this so my grandparents can continue to be taught the missionary lessons."
Uh-oh, you just did yourself in. They're going to catch on to your little game.
Do you really think that was just
leaving
like
the area.
a slip? Or was he planning on telling? It's like, maybe don't announce that to the president during the prayer. That feels kind of
It's like, I just thought this was
risky.
between me and God. I forgot that other people were listening. Just
After
so
the
in
prayer, President said, "Elder Roberts, did I hear you correctly? It's your grandparents you're teaching." I told him the whole story, then added, "I'm pretty sure the reason they agreed to have us teach them is so they can spend some time with me." That may be true. Yeah, as if they're going to just want, like, some other randomers to teach them this gospel that is, like, not letting them see their only grandson.
God works in mysterious ways. This is how it all plays out. This is why Charlie had to die, so that her parents could be redeemed.
That may be true, Jono said, but as I see it, the main issue here is the sovereignty of missionary areas. In fact, if I may read my prepared statement, the president cut her off. "Sister Jono, I don't believe it's necessary for you to continue. It's abundantly clear to me that these good people should not have to leave their home and rent a motel room in order to be taught the gospel." But, like, people in third world countries should have to pay 10% of their income to have it. "Of course they should be taught in their own home." Dono glanced at me and smirked. "I totally agree, President. I assume you'll want us to teach them since they do live in our area." "President, I'm not sure they'll continue without me," I countered. "I would very much like to be there for the discussions." "Even if Sister Dono and Sister Bagley are doing the teaching?" President McNamara asked. Ooh, maybe they're all going to be together.
Oh my God, he's going to have to take back seat to a
Awesome.
woman. He's getting pegged by the end of this book.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to say, especially if they're doing the teaching, but I didn't because it probably would have only made things worse. Even so, the long pause probably gave me away. "Elder?" President asked. "I'm sure Sister Dono and Sister Bagley do an excellent job teaching, President, but, well, these are my grandparents, so naturally I want everything to go well. I'm sure you understand." President McNamara leaned back in his seat, clasped his fingers together, placed them behind his head and looked up at the ceiling as he tried to come up with his decision. A minute later, he put his hands on the desk and turned in my direction. "Elder Roberts," President said, "I can see why you'd want to be with your grandparents for the discussions, and so I will give you and Elder Norton permission to travel to your grandparents' home in Madison once a week for a missionary discussion. I want the lesson to be taught jointly by both sets of missionaries. You may stay half an hour after the discussion, elders, and then you are to return to your own area." That was like the longest, most boring paragraph. "But President," Dono complained, "I haven't read my prepared statement yet."
Let her read
"What
the
is this
D-dang
dialogue?"
statement.
He stood up. "We're done here, Sister Dono." We all had the same train to catch. Dono was so mad at me she wouldn't even walk with us. She and Sister Bagley stayed half a block ahead of us. I didn't care. The fact is, I preferred it. I'm sure that Dono wanted to beat us to the station, grab the next train and leave us behind, but we all ended up getting to the station just after the train pulled out, so we had half an hour to kill.
This is where Elder Renland comes in and is like, "If you feel frustrated as a woman in the church, it's your fault. You're perfectly loved and you're just cutting yourself off with all your anger from the revelations of God. You need to chill out." And it's like she's just being disrespected at every turn by every figure, every male in her life.
And she has a law degree. Like, it's treated kind of casually as just like an interesting plot point, but it's like, do you really think a woman with a law degree would go on a Mormon mission?
There is going to be one
I
in the
know
comments.
I know there is. I know it's happened, I'm sure, but that is like so rare. I approached her and her companion. He's approaching Dono. On Friday, we're meeting again with my grandparents.
What are you as a man doing approaching Dano?
Keep Dano's name out of your mouth, Adam. I'd like to teach them about the importance of baptism. If it's okay with you guys, I'll get us started. When we come to a scripture, I'll ask one of you to read it and bear your testimony. I was under the impression we'd all have a chance to teach, Dano said icily. We will. What would you like Sister Bagley to teach? Sister Bagley, how about you give the opening prayer? All right, Sister Bagley said. How is she going to get better unless she has a chance to teach? Sister Dano said. How about she practices on your investigators and not on my grandparents? So basically you're going to do most of the teaching while the rest of us sit around admiring you. Is that the way you see this? Well, in my opinion, that's not fair. I'm certain President McNamara intended that Sister Bagley and I do the teaching with you and your companion responding when asked. After all, they do live in our area. We've been teaching them, so they're used to us. I don't see how anyone could ever get used to you, Elder. And another thing, quit staring at me all the time.
Oh.
Love her!
If only you could hear the things he was saying about you in his head.
What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. I turned to Sister Bagley. Your companion is delusional. Sister Bagley looked like she was going to cry. Would Heavenly Father want us to be so mean to each other? I can't with this caricature of like a little scared missionary.
But honestly, it do be like that. The tiniest conflict is like, why are we experiencing contention? Don't you know this is the devil, this uncomfortable feeling that I have, that I've conditioned myself to be totally triggered to the point of like losing my sense of identity every time any of my questions are brought or actions are brought into question.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. Dano and I each waited for the other to apologize, so neither of us said anything. Finally, I walked off. After a few minutes, Sister Bagley came to me privately. We'll need the spirit when we teach your grandparents. You know how unreasonable she is sometimes, I complained. Maybe if we have a prayer, it will help, Bagley said.
Their connection to their only grandchild will not be sufficient in this case.
We are not going to have a prayer here with people all around us, I said. That would be way too weird. Then I think you need to apologize, Bagley said. I actually considered apologizing. It was something my mum would have encouraged me to do. But I waited too long. The train was coming. Bagley had made a good point. We'd never get anywhere trying to teach if there was contention between us. I don't know, your grandparents are usually like cutting each other's necks open in front of you. Like, it seems like they're chill with a bit of drama. I think I chipped another tooth as well, but I don't know.
Another tooth?
This tooth
from
feels like weirdly
food.
from a soft gummy food. What? It was the way my teeth scraped together.
Oh, that's why I hardly ever buy anything straight if I can avoid it. Always come on the side.
It must
Get it
be
with the
so
chompers.
nice to be so smart.
No, it's only because I'm terrified.
I am. It's because you're from a family of dentists. And you're poor, so it's like a
Double
double
whammy.
whammy.
A dentist knowledge without the dentist lifestyle.
I'll call you tonight so we can get this straightened out, I said to Jono. I'll call about 9. We'll still be out teaching, Jono said. We're so busy these days. Yeah, right, I scoffed. Don't call me tonight, she said. I don't want to talk to you.
They're falling in love. I hate it. I hate that they're going to fall in love.
Unbearable.
I hate it.
The train stopped. We watched Jono and Bagley climb aboard one car. We boarded the next car. That night I phoned the sisters. Bagley told me Jono wouldn't talk to me. Then tell her something for me. Tell her sorry if I hurt her feelings. There was a long pause while the message was relayed. She says that isn't enough. Another long pause. Because you're only apologising because you think that Bagley had to stop to get prompted. You have to do it rather than admitting how bullheaded, unreasonable, and totally impossible to get along with you are. Do you find me unreasonable, Sister Bagley? Long pause. Not really. Tell her that, I said. Another long pause. I don't think so. I understand. You have to live with her. It's not that bad most of the time. Dunno must have figured out what we were talking about. She came on the line. I will not have you bad-mouthing me to my companion, she said, her voice low and threatening. A woman's voice being low.
Well, yeah, a woman's voice being low is threatening.
Yeah,
that means she's trying
exactly.
to be a man. And that is calling into question
Led by
the proclamation to the family, which has been written at this point.
Why not? Everyone else in the mission does. Oh. She hung up.
Can I just say, ambivalence is one thing. I hate the idea that, cultivating the idea that the way to, like, win a person's heart over, a woman's heart over, is to be an absolute dick to them, and then they'll fall in love with you. Do hate that part.
Yeah, but I think that is just, like, a natural, ignorant extension of the fact that a lot of people do kind of feel sexually attracted towards people who are mean to them. I know eroticism doesn't always make sense and it's not always tidy like we want it to be.
I know.
Anyway, she hung up.
I've used ropes before, Samantha.
I was going to make a joke, but I didn't want you to think for even a split second that it was true. But I was going to be like, well, I've done bukkake. Me who knows what's going on in your life. What? Just like, who are the 6 men? How did you find them?
Yeah, right. I would have heard about it by Jared from Jared by now.
There's just no way you'd find 6 people you like enough to do it, you know? And I'm like, would you want them to be good friends, strangers? I don't know. We don't need to talk about this.
I bet you can round them up on Grindr.
I just feel like I need a bit more. I need some kind of emotional thing. Maybe a particularly attractive book club.
A row team.
My cousin's a rower. I can't think about that. Once again, after a short time...
It's not always neat and tidy, Sam.
Fuck off! Fuck off! My other cousin watches this. This is becoming dumb. Becky, I'm so sorry.
Did you say Bakeki?
I hate this.
You never laughed at a pun of mine.
Once again, after a short time, I regretted what I said. I tried to call several times that night, but apparently they'd taken their phone off the hook. On Friday morning, the day we were going to give another discussion, I asked Norton what he thought I should do. Norton shrugged. Give Dano whatever she wants. Just cave into her demands? Why would I do that? Because if you don't, our time with your grandparents is going to be a total disaster. I'm not going to let her walk all over me.
She's literally just asking to be treated like a human being.
Also, Adam, I mean... Don't worry, like, a man gave her permission to be, like, asking that this be this way. So this is still firmly within the realms of the patriarchy.
Yeah, the key holder stuck his little key in there, and he turns her, and she's just doing his will now.
Then we might as well not show up tonight, he said. I paced the floor, shaking my head. It isn't fair. What other choice have you got? You can't change her. So between you two, who's left? I raged against the injustice of having to let her have her way. But by the time... It's not about the grandparents, it's just... But by the time we met Dano and Bagley at the train station in Madison that night, I'd resigned myself to do what Norton had suggested. Sister Dano, I'm sorry for what I said on the phone. Also, I want you to know that I've changed my mind. You tell us what you want to happen tonight, and we'll go along with that. Sister Bagley and I will do whatever you say, Elder Roberts, she said sweetly, with none of the animosity that had been there before between us. What's going on here? I decided this was a time when I should honor the priesthood. Very clever ploy, I thought. Brilliant strategy. She has me where she wants me. Now I'll have to act reasonably and be fair.
He is Sam 2.0.
How about if I summarize what Elder Norton and I covered last time and then you start the discussion? Whenever you want, just nod to Norton and he'll carry on. And then Sister Bagley, and then you again. I'll summarize, then ask one of them to offer a prayer. She nodded. That sounds like a very good plan. Thank you. We were staring into each other's eyes again, this time trying to figure out what had caused the change in the other. Why did you give up? I asked her privately. This is too important to mess up, she said. Thank you. I had previously called my grandparents and told them 2 sister missionaries would be with us, so they were expecting them. We met in their living room. We spent the first half hour giving the sisters a chance to get acquainted with Eddie and Claire and looking through scrapbooks. Dano and Bagley learned all about my mum and dad. Charlie had a way of helping Sam break out of his usual boring and predictable lifestyle, Claire said. Claire did not say that.
Claire had read the book.
Claire from the movie did not say that. Claire from the movie not from the book. She was so... I hate when they're just the only way they talk about their, like, dead daughter is just through the lens of the main plot line of this
Jack
book.
it's so lazy. He can't even
so
just
lazy.
come from a genuine angle or explore anything different. It's just like, I'm just gonna restate what I've said before in painstaking detail.
And it continues. She was so spontaneous and freewheeling, and he was so reserved that it was a wonder they got along at all. She laughed and shook her head. At times she'd embarrass him horribly, and he'd get frustrated with her. But on the other hand, she filled his life with fun. Well, he went right back to not being fun at all. I'd like to be more like that someday, Dano said. I tend to be more direct and goal-oriented. You're more like Sam, then. Elder Roberts, what are you like? Claire asks. She's like, which gender are you? I'm more like my dad. He's driven by goals. My mum is like that too, come to think of it. It's goals or fun. You can't have both,
You
kids.
cannot.
And ideally, a woman is more fun and a man is more goals. Sister Bagley? I'm not much fun either. Of course, the sister missionaries are not much
She's
fun.
just always just like grunching over there.
Imagine being a person who's like, I'm not a very fun person.
I'm just a dewy-eyed sister. I don't know nothing.
I'm so shy. Elder Norton? I'm the same way. Also, imagine trying to sell your church when everyone's like, yeah, I'm not really a fun person.
Oh, no, don't really.
Well, let's stick together and see how we all change, Claire said cheerily. Eddie reached...
Oh, Claire, you have yet to find out how much you're about to change.
Oh, Claire. Claire. Eddie reached down next to the sofa and retrieved a baseball mitt and held it out to me. There you go, son. What's this? I asked. Just a little something. I bought it for you the day you were born. At the time, Claire told me I'd better wait until you're a little older before I gave it to you. He cleared his throat. I guess I waited too long. Before we even knew it, your mum got sick and then, well... I just can't imagine just like giving up like that on your only grandchild. Like, send him the gift. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Why are you being weird about it? Like, don't you have more of a desire to be connected? They act as if like, yeah, we just kind of lost touch. It's like, how do you just lose touch?
The only way is if what actually happened, which is
Yeah.
Sam was like, we don't want you in our lives. We're moving. Please don't try to contact us.
But then they only speak really positively
I
about
know,
Sam.
that's
That's why like
so
none of the pieces
dumb.
make any sense. Like, this is not how humans behave. He stopped talking and stared at the floor. I thought Claire would step in and get us through this, but she didn't. She was getting teary-eyed too. The thing is, everybody lost out in this deal, Eddie continued. You lost your mum, and Dad lost the love of his life, but Claire and I lost too. We lost the chance to be your granddaddy and your grandmama, and to spoil you rotten like we wanted to, and to always be on your side no matter what curves life threw at you. That's what we lost. Did you lose it, or did you willingly give it up? He handed me the baseball glove. I suppose you're a little too old to play Little League ball now, aren't you? Well, save it. This is like a movie trying so hard to win an Oscar in the 90s. Well, save it for when you... Like, imagine, like, Will Smith delivering this speech to, like, his child. Well, save it for when you have a boy. Then at least he'll get some use out of it. Thank you, I stammered. It's so... Like, as he's, like, giving the mitt, he's, like, so sad and apologizing for it and assuming he's not going to use it. I don't know, it's just bumming me out.
It's weird.
I held the mitt in one hand and grabbed his hand with my other and held it tightly for a moment. Oh, there's an electric train too, stored away in the basement, Eddie said.
Why is he getting all the...
That's so
This is
sad
not
and
checking
cute.
out.
By this time, Dano and Bagley had tears in their eyes also. Look at us bawling our eyes out like this, Claire finally said. Bring it home, Claire, yeah. She got up and went into the bathroom and then came back with a box of tissues. We each took one, except for Norton, who seemed to be lost in his own world. He's like, what am I doing with my fucking life? From that point on...
He's like reading Zelf on the shelf on his drive, Google Drive.
I never again thought of them as Eddie and Claire. They became, to me, my grandfather and my grandmother. The way they loved me after all the years, with little or no contact, made it easy to love them too. We probably better get started, Norton said. Our presentation about the importance of baptism went better than I'd hoped for. I had to admit Jono did a good job teaching. Afterwards, my grandfather, with some help from Sister Jono, said the prayer. As we were about to leave, my grandmother said, Don't go yet, we have dessert. Claire made her famous Italian dessert, my grandfather said. Just sit and relax, it'll only take a minute. Claire started towards the kitchen. Eddie looked like he wanted to stay, but Claire, probably worried he'd give me a hug, called for him to help her. As he stood up to leave, Jono asked what dessert she'd fixed. I'm pretty sure it's tiramisu, he said. Uh-oh, we have a word of wisdom conflict coming up, I'm assuming.
Why is it?
Because tiramisu is traditionally made with coffee and I think a lot of the time brandy or like amaretto, or like some kind of like liqueur. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's tiramisu, he said. That's what she usually fixes for the company. With that, he left. Tiramisu is made with coffee and wine, Dono whispered frantically, panic written on her face. Are you serious? I asked.
Shit. It's like,
What are we going to do? Bagley asked. My grandfather came back with a tray of glasses of water. Claire got up real early this morning to make this, so I sure hope you enjoy it. He set out drinks and then returned to the kitchen. This is like the kind of things that Mormons think about as like what would be like a real conflict in this life. And this is the shit that
This is what
that
Heavenly
they have
Father
to...
cares about.
Yeah, this is like the thought exercises worth engaging in. How can we eat this if it's got coffee and wine in it? Dano whispered to me. It probably doesn't have much, I said quietly. Remember when Norton was like, first you're teaching your grandparents, next thing you know, you're like violating all these other rules too. Now he's about to break the word of wisdom for these guys.
Slippery slope. Next thing you know, he and Dano are going to be running off together. I don't know what doing.
So what are you saying? A little coffee and wine is okay? Is that it? Dono replied. What I'm saying is this is my grandmother and she went to a lot of work to make this for us and I really don't see how we can offend her by not having any. So what if she offers us a beer next time? Dono hissed.
The philosophical trolley question is a tiramisu.
Yeah.
The Mormon version is a tiramisu. To
Oh
baptize your grandparents or jeopardize your eternal salvation by taking a small amount of coffee.
So what if she offers us a beer next time? Dono hissed. Are we going to chug-a-lug that down too? That reminds me, I'm going to tell Jared, bring beer if you want.
What next? Bestiality?
We got a goat in the garden. Go and have a go, honestly. Could you possibly be reasonable for once in your life? We're talking about a tiny piece of dessert. This isn't about being reasonable, she said. What is it about then? Why are you so willing to throw away everything you've been taught your entire life? Do you have any actual guiding principles in your life or not?
This is a tiramisu.
Tiramisu! Tiramisu.
Oh.
It's not a hot drink.
It's not even a hot,
It's not. You're not going to
plate.
get addicted to tiramisu. Just then, my grandparents came in with Claire carrying a tray of dessert on small plates. Here it is, my grandfather announced. You're going to love this. When they know that the missionaries don't drink, I feel like that would be something that come up.
You're going to love this coffee and wine-laced plate that my wife has slaved over.
Blood, sweat, and tears went into these tiramisu. Eddie took the tray and my grandmother handed each of us a plate. Dono and I traded desperate glances. I was not going to offend my grandmother, and so I took a small bite. It was the best dessert I had ever had in my life. This is so good. It doesn't taste at all like what I thought it would taste like. Dono sighed and took a tiny bite, then broke into a big smile. Oh my gosh, that is amazing, she said. Finally, Bagley took a taste. This tastes real good, she said in her little girl voice. Eat it up, children. There's plenty more in the kitchen, my grandmother said.
Sorry, who's using their little girl voice?
Bagley, she's shy and has the voice of a
This
little
is so good.
She's a Victorian ghost show
Okay.
on the Mish. I'm afraid if I eat too much, I won't be able to sleep tonight, Dono said. Total silence. As if that was like a rude comment. Why is that? My grandmother asked. Dono said, isn't there coffee in tiramisu? Grandmother says, tiramisu? This isn't tiramisu, it's cannoli. Who told you it was tiramisu? Eddie nervously smiled. You always make tiramisu for company. Not for the missionaries. What's wrong with you? Missionaries don't use coffee or wine. This just has ricotta and chocolate in it. We'll have some more. But didn't they still sin in their hearts?
They did. They're still going to be held accountable for
know
that
about
at the
that.
last day. That's the tiramisu philosophy problem, is like it ends up not being tiramisu and then you still are guilty because you sinned in your heart.
I'll have some more then, Norton said. We each had seconds. This is so good, Dono said. Is there any chance I could get the recipe? Oh yes, of course, my grandmother said. The sisters went into the kitchen with my grandmother. I went through yet another scrapbook with my grandfather, and Norton had some more dessert. It was amazing to see my mother when she was about the same age as me. I could see why my dad had fallen in love with her. My mum was hot. We could hear the sisters and my grandmother laughing a few times during the time they were gone. I was glad they were getting along so well. My grandmother insisted we take some dessert with us and gave us each a piece in a plastic container. We were all very grateful. This has been so nice to be with you both today, Dono said. Can all four of you come back for our next lesson? My grandfather asked. Tell us what it's going to be about and we'll prepare for it. They are such nerds. Why are they so into this?
They just want to see their grand boy, and they're just so open to huge life changes, and they're not real deep philosophical thinkers. And
By all means, come by any time, Claire said. Next time, come a little earlier and I'll cook up some steaks, my grandfather said. We've got an outdoor grill now and I've become quite the master chef.
But, Elder, aren't we supposed to eat meat sparingly? Are you going to sacrifice all we believe in?
In his mind, at least, my grandmother teased. Do we have to call you sister all the time, my grandfather asked. I'm afraid you do. Well, tell me this and I promise not to tell a soul. What's your first name? I really can't tell you, Dono said. I think that's a really bad missionary strategy. Like, it comes across as really culty if someone won't tell you their first name.
Yeah.
It's Brianna, I said without thinking. Dono glared at me, then turned to my grandparents. Please don't call me that, though. We won't, my grandmother said, turning to my grandfather so he'd know he'd been warned.
Also, dick move.
Yeah. We want you to feel comfortable while you're in our home. Once again, as the four of us headed back to the train station, Dono, with Bagley trying to keep up with her, forged on ahead of us. We had a 10-minute wait for the train. At first, Dono ignored us, but then she marched over to me and said, "We need to talk." We walked a few feet away from our companions. "How do you know my first name?" she asked. "One of the elders in your last area told me." "How did he know?" "I'd rather not say." "You'd better tell me," she demanded. "Well, some of the elders in the mission call you Brianna Be Brief." This is such a lame insult. Brianna Be Brief.
Did Trump give that nickname? It sucks.
She gasped. Why would they call me that? I tried to put a positive spin to it. Because you stand up for yourself. But that's good, you know, and you don't let people walk all over you. I should be more like that. "What else do they say about me?" she demanded. "That you have a law degree." It's like, I hope they say that about me. "That you have a law degree and sometimes you're just a tiny bit difficult to work with." They say I'm hard to work with? Well, I think you can see that simply isn't true.
Anyone who doesn't just let people walk all over them is hard to work with.
As a joke, I faked the look of a browbeaten husband. "Yes, dear, whatever you say." "Don't call me dear." "Relax, okay? Can't you tell when someone is being sarcastic?" "You are interested in me, aren't you?" "No, not a bit," I said. "For your information, I have someone waiting for me. She's very good looking and always treats me with a great deal of respect." Actually, that was a lie. There was nobody waiting for me, at least not by that point in my mission.
Nobody would respect me.
The girls I'd been friends with in high school were now all getting married. I said it just to keep Dono from thinking I cared about her, which I truly did not. "I have someone waiting for me too," she said. "Well, I hope he waits." "Oh, he'll wait, don't you worry about that," she shot back. "He's totally committed to our relationship." "I'm very happy for your relationship," I said pleasantly. "We will not talk about this again, will we?" she said. It was not a question. I certainly hope not. We returned to our companions. When we arrived for our next visit, my grandfather had the electric train he had brought for me when I was a baby set up in the living room. We watched it make its way around the circular track, and then he handed me the controls. "Go ahead, give it a try."
Oh.
That's beautiful. It was embarrassing to be doing this in front of Norton, Bagley, and Dono, but for my grandfather's sake, I did my best to be enthusiastic about the train.
Now he's going to bring out little suits and costumes that he brought with him when he's a baby, and he's like, "Now try it on."
It's going to get really dark. "This is really great." "It's all yours," my grandfather said proudly. "This is the first time it's ever been used." "I would have gotten a big kick out of this when I was a kid," I said. "That's for sure," my grandfather said. And then he got misty-eyed again and in a lower voice added, "There's a lot of things we could have done together, just you and me. And of course other things with Claire and you and me." He shook his head. "But that's all water under the bridge now, right? We've got to move on." He looked so sad. I didn't care if the others were watching. I reached over and rested my hand on his arm. "I wish we could have done those things, Grandfather." He swallowed hard. He's like, "I'm going to go all out and do a complete emotional reaction." He swallowed hard. That's something I've always wanted to hear. "I can call you that now if you want." He looked at my hand on his arm and nodded. "I would appreciate that." I turned to my grandmother. "What would you like me to call you, Claire?" She smiled. "I would like it if you called me grandmother." "I'll do that."
They're DTRing.
"Group hug," my grandfather suggested. That sounds. The
Him
granddad
and the
always
huggy,
trying
the
to hug.
granddad.
"That sounds like a great idea," I said. The three of us stood up and put our arms around each other like a small football team in a huddle. I was very happy at that moment. Maybe too happy. I looked at Dono and said, "Care to join us?" All right. What, in like your grandparent hug?
You want to be part of the family
That's
hug?
really weird. She laughed. "Well, I'm not going to hug you, that's for sure, but I can hug your grandmother. How would that be?" I love just the singling out of gender, which I think makes it weird because then you're implying that it would be sexual for you to hug his grandfather, which like you're then setting up a system where it feels more sexual. So you're making everything weirder than it has to be. My grandmother and Dono hugged each other, and then they invited Sister Bagley to join them. Norton glanced at Eddie, then looked over at me and just held up his hands in a defensive gesture. Dono taught most of the lesson and did a good job. My grandparents even agreed to go to church on Sunday. A week later, one day before we were scheduled to teach my grandparents again, Dono called. Guess what? Today when we dropped by, your grandparents asked about tithing and we taught them. It went really well. I was stunned. Are you still there? She asked. I thought we'd agreed that we were all going to teach together. Well, we dropped by to see them and they started asking about it, and before we know it, we taught them. I see, I said icily. If you want, we can go over the same material when you and your companion are with us, Dono said. No, that won't be necessary. How about if you do most of the teaching next time, she asked. I think that's a good idea. The next day when we met with my grandparents, I started out doing the teaching, but my grandparents directed most of their questions to Dono. Afterwards, we had cannoli again, but this time Dono and Bagley had made it. Oh, she's stealing his grandparents. They'd spent the afternoon in the kitchen with my grandmother.
Because they're going to be her grandparents.
Beautiful. I was depressed that it tasted so good. What do you think? My grandmother asked. It's okay, I guess, I said with little enthusiasm. That's so fucking rude. The best part was us being able to work with you in the kitchen, Dono told my grandmother, really rubbing it in. After we finished eating, my grandfather asked the four of us what I at first thought was a strange question. How are things in your apartments? Does everything work where you live? What do you mean? I asked. Do the drains drain? Are the faucets leaking? Do the locks work? Anything needing fixing? Because if there is, I'd be happy to drop over sometime and fix whatever isn't working. It's what I do every day. Come on out to the garage and I'll show you around. Sisters, don't go out there, it's boring. Let's stay here and talk, my grandmother said. Norton and I went to the garage with my grandfather. He showed us all the tools he had, and more nuts, bolts, and screws in neatly labelled bins than most hardware stores carried. Norton wasn't much interested, so he went outside the garage and looked at the garden. I wish I could do that with Norton. Just get some fresh air. I've changed...
Wow, out of sight, out of earshot. Really lax mission rules these days.
I've changed a lot since we lived in Utah, my grandfather said. Back then, I was a corporate star. In fact, your grandfather, Roberts, was one of my co-workers.
He was the assistant manager at in a shopping mall.
Yeah. I'll tell you sometime how, in a way, I was responsible for your dad and your mum meeting, but not now. He sighed. When your mum died, I felt like my whole world had been shot out from under me. I couldn't work with the same energy I used to have. Nothing seemed to matter anymore. So after a while, I resigned and we moved back here, where we had lived while Charlie was growing up. He opened up a metal drawer and pulled out some bolts and gently tossed them in his hand while he continued. I didn't work for a year, and then I heard about an apartment building for sale. It needed a lot of work, and the owner had been trying to sell it for a while. Why are we going into, business logistics? It's just, Jack's favourite thing to, fill time with. Mm-hmm. It was in a good neighbourhood, and I felt it could bring in some money if it were completely remodelled. So I took out a loan and started to fix up that place. Within a year, we started to make money. Also, it's Jack always just, Jack is obsessed with fixer-uppers. He did it with the homestead in South Dakota, and that's just what he cares about.
Do you think he's a handyman?
I think he fancies himself as one, if only in his imagination. And I do
maybe
feel
the imagination, because we saw how his Ferris wheel worked.
Although Jack is a physicist, so I don't know. That could go either way. I could see him being pretty good with stuff Anyway, clearly he's very into.
Yes.
The idea of fixing up houses, because it's just so funny how the same things... There's not a lot of variety in his thoughts, basically. He returned...
He's a citizen of Rexburg, Idaho.
Yeah. He returned the bolts to the drawer.
No offense.
A little bit of offense.
Tiny bit of
it's not your fault, but it is offensive to be
be
from there. And led me to an area where he kept his plumbing supplies. At first, none of the people who lived there trusted me because the previous owner had let the place go downhill. But after a while, they learned that I'd be there if they had a problem. Now, even with 3 apartment buildings, this is landlord propaganda. I take great pride in taking care of my tenants, fixing their toilets, their drains, their faucets, painting, planting flowers in the spring, fertilizing the lawns, keeping up the grounds. They know they can count on me when there's a problem.
My toxic trait is that I've had really good landlords.
My dad's a small-time landlord, and I think he's great. I've got no issues with him being a landlord, and I'm happy for him.
My current landlord is an old Mormon farmer, and they you know how it is when they're I'll explain to you why I'm not racist, and then they say racist stuff. And
yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
wow. But I think he likes me a lot.
That's sweet.
I saw him the other day and he's like, I'm glad to see you. And I was
Aww.
like,
You famously do, like, if anyone's, it's people like you and Jared who soften racist hearts, like, honestly, like, because you and Jared are able to, that's what I love about both of you, just connect with people like that on a really authentic level that is not, like, condoning any harm, it's just, like, really pure, and then you slowly soften their hearts, and I'm like, that's how you make change.
Let's hope so.
Norton peeked inside the garage. Elder, we need to be going now. My grandfather offered to give us rides back to our apartment, but we told him it would be better for us if we took the train. As the four of us walked back to the train station, I spoke to Dunno. I want you to quit dropping by and seeing them all the time. I can't agree to that, Dunno said. I knew this was a big mistake to let you two into the teaching process. They live in our area. If we want to visit them every 15 minutes, we'll do it, she retorted. I want to be there when they're taught. Why? Are you implying we don't do a good job? How can you say that after having seen me teach? It's easy, actually. The minute I said it, I regretted it. But I wasn't going to back down. This is such a childish argument.
Uh-huh.
You don't care anything about my feelings, do you? Dunno asked. You don't have feelings, Dunno. You're a lawyer, for crying out loud. Isn't that in the scriptures, though? I have feelings. Well, what about my feelings? I blurted out. Are they of no importance to you? Okay, a man is being hysterical. He needs to calm down.
Just
now,
like his father.
I can see that what I said could be misinterpreted. What I meant, of course, was that these were my grandparents and I wanted to be there whenever they were taught. Unfortunately, Norton and Bagley heard my outburst. They both looked at me with suspicion. I can't talk to you anymore without my companion, Dunno said, returning to Bagley. When the train came, we again boarded different cars. Later that night, Norton asked, So what's going on between you and Dunno? Nothing is going on. I'm just mad at her for taking over everything. 2 days later, I got a phone call from President McNamara. We're transferring you today, Elder. He gave me the details. I was being transferred to the farthest end of the mission and was to get the earliest bus available. Why am I being transferred? I think you probably know the answer to that. I haven't done anything wrong. We'll talk about it next zone conference, but for now you're being transferred to an area where there are no sisters.
That is pretty, like, all
Pretty
around
fucked
a
up.
brutal system. Like, it sucks that she is trying to get in on his grandparent baptism game. Like, that's too bad. But, you know, law be law. It's her jurisdiction. And he doesn't have to be such an asshole about it. And then just taking someone away from their grandparents. That's so fucked up.
Again, it's like you're having a bit too much of a sense of self on this mission, you know?
Oh, yeah. I was transferred so many times as a missionary. I had, like, 25 companions or something. And was being transferred all the time. And it sucks. Like, I feel like it really affected how I related to people for a while. Because it just, like, had this block of, like, people, like, I just can't get attached to anybody.
It's so true. You're in, like, this traumatic thing. And the way that you, like, adjust to new, like, massive things is by, like, having time to adjust. But it's, like, almost, like, part of the trauma and, like, the constantly breaking you down is, like, right when you start to feel settled and safe, everything's shaken up again. It's just, like, that feels, like, abusive. I phoned the sisters. Sister Janot answered. You got me transferred, didn't you? I asked. What are you talking about? I'm being transferred today. You wanted me out of the picture, didn't you? So you'd be the one to teach and baptize my grandparents. You called President McNamara, didn't you? There was a long pause. I did call him, but I didn't ask him to transfer you. What did you tell him? I'd rather not say. But let me say this. I do hope you'll be able to be there when your grandparents are baptized. Oh, I'll be there, Sister Jono. Don't you worry about that.
Oh, no. If she confessed that she secretly has a crush on him, I will walk out of this book.
Oh, fuck off.
I think there's a chance we could hear that.
Fuck right off. Even if it means breaking mission rules, that's what's got you into this problem, isn't it? I hung up on her. I turned to Norton. Let's go visit my grandparents. Norton's like, I don't give a shit about these grandparents. That's out of our area. So what are they going to do? Transfer me? Let's go. I packed and then we left. By the time we'd arrived at my grandparents' place, I'd cooled down enough to realize I should not let them know how furious I was with Dunno for getting me transferred. I didn't want to put any barriers in the way of their continuing with the discussions. First, I explained that missionaries generally serve a few months in one area when they're transferred. Well, that's happening to me now. I'm being transferred. I leave today, so I won't be around for a while. My grandmother looked as though she was going to cry. You're leaving? I'm afraid so, but the sisters will continue teaching you. Who do we call to complain about you leaving? My grandfather demanded.
You have to take it up with God. He's the one. I covenanted with him when I was put on the spot in front of all my friends and family to promise I give them all my time and attention. You have to take it up with them.
You're not wrong, Tana, because he says, I talk to them about sustaining church leaders. Maybe we could come to church where you are when we get baptized, my grandfather said. That would be wonderful. There's nothing I'd like better. Then I let out a big sigh. But you need to be around the people in your ward so they can help you. You are so much like Laura, my grandmother said. How's that? You're very strict with yourself.
She doesn't know anything about Laura. Haven't they
You
been
don't know
completely
Laura.
out of picture his whole life? What are you talking about?
The grandparents sure seem to claim a lot of insider knowledge of everyone.
They're actually ancient beings.
I'll only be in my new area for a couple of months, and then my mission will be over. Before I go back west, I'll come and visit you. It's not fair, my grandmother said. Your family in Utah has had you for 20 years. I think we should have you for at least a little while. Norton tapped me on the sleeve and pointed to his watch. I nodded and stood up. We really need to go, I said. I'm sorry about this. It's not the way I pictured this turning out. I hope this won't discourage you from continuing to learn about the church. I felt as though I should bear my testimony to them. I want you to know that I know the things we have been teaching you are true. Joseph Smith really is a true prophet, and the church is the kingdom of God on earth. There is nothing more important than you being baptized. Please keep studying with the sisters. My grandfather cleared his throat. For the past 20 years, we've gone over in our minds the changes we saw in your mother when she joined the church. Oh, God, wet dream. At first, we weren't in favor of what she was doing, but as time went on, she became such a powerful influence on us that we began to think that maybe there is something to this after all. What we've learned from what you've taught us has strengthened this conviction. He paused.
What? Name one thing.
Name one fucking thing.
What were they
So
inspired
we're going
by?
to go ahead with this. That is great news, I said softly. We're glad you were the one to teach us, my grandfather said. You're all we have left of our daughter now. Before you go, there's something I want to give you. I'll be right back. In spite of his bad knees, he hurried up the stairs. Can I make you a sack lunch to take? My grandmother asked. I can make you some sandwiches. No, that's okay. It'll be fine. It's not a very long bus ride. My grandfather returned carrying a photograph of my real mum and my dad on the day they were married. I found this last night. I thought you might like to have it. I felt myself choking up as I looked at the photo.
I wish you'd call them Charlie Mom and Laura Mom.
I know. It was taken outside the Salt Lake City temple. What caught my attention was, first of all, how beautiful my mum was, and second, how happy they both looked. Especially my dad. I don't think I'd ever seen him look that happy before.
Again with the hot mom complex. First thing noticed. Mom very hot.
Phew. Norton reminded me that we had to go. Let us give you a ride, my grandfather said. No, we'll be fine. We're on the train for just a few minutes and then a quick walk to the bus station. We thanked them again and I hugged them both before Norton and I stepped out the front door. They came out on the porch to watch us. Don't forget us, Adam, my grandmother called out. We have always loved you and we will always love you. I love you both. I'll come back someday. You'd better. We waved and hurried down the street toward the train station. 2 hours later, I boarded a bus to my new area. Oh, we did it. We did it!
Oh, we did it.
There's so
Congrats.
many long, boring bits in that.
Damn. I always expect Jack to be a little better, and it never
No,
happens.
you fucking idiot for thinking that. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, without you, we wouldn't be doing this self-destructive behavior on ourselves. So thank you so much.
Yep.